Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you are. Thank you for making AP Human Geography a part of your day. Can't wait to talk to you about the von Thunen model today. So today what we're going to be doing is trying to describe that von Thunen model and then explain the significance and importance of how close a commercial farmer is to the market with the transfer goal of understanding how all this relates to your world. So let's kick it off first with evaluating the importance of access to markets. Johann Heinrich von Thunen is a guy who owns some land in northern Germany. He writes this book called The Isolated State in 1826, and where he proposes a model named after himself, by the way, where he says essentially a commercial farmer whose purpose is to sell selects. When they're looking at what sort of crops and what sort of animals they're going to use, they're going to select those animals and crops based upon a couple of things. The first is the land costs. So we need to look at how much money we can clear per acre after the yield, after the harvest. Okay. The second thing you're going to look at is transportation costs, right? It costs to transport goods to the market. What is that cost? Essentially, what's going to happen is I'm going to do some basic, simple mathematics. I'm going to look at my profit. I'm going to subtract my transportation costs, and then that's going to inform me where I need to engage in my agriculture or what crops and animals I need to select so that I can be the most profitable. Because the name of the game in commercial farming is making money. To summarize his whole theory and hypothesis, we could just say that farms that locate close to the market are going to select stuff that costs a lot to transport, and farms that locate further away from the market are going to select things that are cheaper to transport. That's a function of mathematics. I'm going to try to walk you through what this might look like, and then try to apply it modern day. Then we'll look at some benefits and drawbacks of it to kind of give a well-rounded discussion of the von Thunen model. So jump in this boat with me, help me row. We're all getting to the destination of trying to understand more about this model and how it's applicable even to modern times. Here we go. So here's this book, The Isolated State. Again, this guy's from northern Germany. Obviously, the world looks way different now than it did in 1826 northern Germany. Nevertheless, there's some things that are still applicable. I mean, people, I don't care what you're producing. People are looking at the production costs and land costs and transportation costs. That's one of the reasons that some businesses and some disruptions have changed the way that our economic system and our job sector, from primary, secondary, tertiary, those have changed over time because of people evaluating those costs and trying to come up to minimize costs and maximize profit. So his idea is kind of shown up here, and he's going to document and diagram this. So let's walk it all out here. Whoa. Man, that's satisfying. A little corn there for you. Pop quiz. What are the four differences between commercial farms and subsistence farms? You can hit pause on this if you'd like while you rack your brain. Remember, the learning comes from the struggle and from working with responses that may not be accurate the first time. Okay, the four differences, if you remember: purpose. A commercial farm is designed to sell, whereas a subsistence farm is designed to mostly consume and subsist. Technology and mechanization. You're looking at it right here. On a commercial farm, it's John Deere. On a subsistence farm, it's just John. Maybe a few animals. Maybe some hand tools. Farm size. On a commercial farm, you need a big farm in order to make all this mechanization and technology worthwhile, whereas farm size are a lot smaller in subsistence farms. Your average commercial farm in North America is over 400 acres. That's a big deal. Last thing, percentage of farmers in the labor force. Small percentage of farmers in the labor force. In the United States, it's less than 2%. Larger percentage of farmers in the labor force in LDCs, underdeveloped countries, developing countries, subsistence farms. We call that agricultural density, number of farmers per arable land. Roy Rogers famously said, buy land. They stopped making it. I might correct old Roy and say, buy arable land. They stopped making it. Okay, so here we are. Let's say I can sell corn for $200 per metric ton. All right, let's just say that. Cool. And my yield per acre is 5 tons. So 200 multiplied by 5, carry the 9 there. Yeah, that's going to be 1,000. Everybody clear on that basic math? Excellent. So I got me $1,000 profit. Let's go. But I'm not done, because after I'm on the farm, I then, there's my $1,000. That's awesome. I then need to transport that corn to the market. Well, if I have to transport the corn to the market, let's say it's 10 cents a mile to transport 5 tons of corn. If you can catch my typo already, good for you. Should be an S after it apostrophe. Okay, so 10 cents a mile to transport 5 tons of corn. The net profit from the sale of 5 tons of corn grown on a farm 1,000 miles away then would be $900, because I would take my $1,000 profit that I already had, but I have to subtract $100, because at 10 cents a mile on 1,000 miles, that's $100 I got to pay in transportation costs. So 1,000 minus 100 gives me 900, right? But if I would have to transport something 10,000 miles away, now I'm talking about $1,000 in transport costs. Well, my profit was only $1,000. So 1,000 minus 1,000, you know who I am? I'm even Steven, because I'm not making any money there. So essentially, the basic idea is beyond 10,000 miles, corn wouldn't be profitable because the cost of transporting that corn exceeds my gross profit. So we go back to what we said at the very beginning. Our mathematics show that farms located closer to the market tend to select crops with higher transportation costs per acre. At a certain point, it's just not profitable. Now, you want to get really next level. What about if the price of corn dropped, right? How far could I then transport? If the price of corn dropped to, I don't know, $150 per metric ton, well, now I got to rerun different calculations. What if it went up to 250 per metric ton? Well, now I could transport it further and still make a profit. So it all goes back to that. And we know that the cost of goods change. We've been discussing supply and demand. We've been discussing when demand is stagnant versus when demand is increased. All of that goes into the equation. We were discussing subsidies, right? Which, yeah, you may not pay for it at the supermarket. I don't know why it's that super. Well, you may not pay for it at the market, but you might be paying for it in your taxes. Von Thunen then says, here we go. In the first ring, I'm noticing it's mostly gardens and milk. Why? Because they're expensive to deliver and they're highly perishable. Okay? Obviously, we know about the perishability of things in gardens and milk. I mean, they brand that date on the side just so you know after this day, man, it is donezo, right? It's perishable. So think about the perishability of milk going back to 1826, all right? Now, you have wood, because wood was mostly used for fuel before we get to, I don't want to get into some of the other fossil fuels later on, but wood was used for construction and for fuel, so they need wood. At that point, wood was really good, but wood is very heavy to transport, and so it would need to be located closer because it's expensive to transport. That third ring, now we're getting into various crops and pasture. Land costs decrease the further away you are from the market. And then in the outside, we're going to have animal grazing. Again, lots of space. The further you are away from the market, the less valuable the land. That principle is still true to this day. We'll talk about central business districts later on. You know, an 8.5 by 11, like a standard sheet of paper, that tract of land downtown in Tokyo, Japan, would be just that right there, building vertically up, would be worth over $10,000. Okay. So the closer you are to the market, the more expensive land costs are. Here's again a very decent picture of his model. I've seen some other like quasi bid rent pictures on the internet that you can check out. Let's look at some of the weaknesses. Okay, so again, it's all about the market, people with dispensable income willing to spend. That's the name of the game here. Weaknesses of the model. Well, number one, he didn't consider site factors, things like land, labor, capital. What about the physical site factors? What if there's a river rolling through that city? What if there's a mountainous landscape? Didn't consider that. Didn't consider human factors either. Social customs didn't consider. What if there's a taboo on a particular type of food? I mean, there's so many different nuances that he didn't consider. And again, I'm not mad at him for that. When you have a general policy, sometimes you have to generalize. When you have a general model, sometimes you have to generalize. You can't make a model for every little particular government policy that may change, particularly as they're reacting to the needs and desires of the citizenry. The other weakness of the model, it assumes all land is flat with similar characteristics. If you're ever looking to criticize a model on an AP exam, right on a shortcut in your brain should be featureless plane, right? All of these models are based on a flat plane. So if they're like, oh, we'll criticize this geographic model, you should have as kind of like your mental cheat card, flat plane, because all of these models have to kind of just assume a general flat landscape. And the last thing is develop for a small region with a single market. We know of all these weaknesses, that might be the largest one, because we are not living in a world with a single market, right? There are multiple markets. If you don't like the cost of something now, you can just go to the next town, or how about get online? So that's another weakness. Now, what about the strengths? Okay. Well, let's look at some of these strengths. This is really good for showing the influence of not only transportation costs, but I would even say it begins to introduce net profit and cost of your land, which lends itself toward what I would say is production costs. So it's really good at kind of evaluating that. You can apply it on a national scale, and you can apply it on a global scale. Let's say I'm a subsistence farmer, for example, and we're pretty good right now at subsisting on the land, but we have some excess supply, and we want to kind of devote a portion of our crop yield to like a cash crop we want to sell in the international trade. So all right, let's go ahead and get ready to do that. Well, if I'm looking to sell in international trade, and I'm looking to sell to a market of, say, for example, North America or Western Europe, I'm less likely to grow something highly perishable, because that needs to be close to the market, as Von Thunen showed us. I'm less likely to grow something that's heavy or bulky, because those need to be located close to the market, as Von Thunen showed us. So it's a lot more feasible for a subsistence farmer that's looking to dabble their toes in the waters of international trade to transport something that is cheap to transport over long distances, right? So again, I think that is a benefit of the model, and that's a huge point, by the way, as a tip of the cap to Johan. Okay, here's a last picture, and my friends, looks like we are going to be done. Hopefully, you now know and have been able to describe and evaluate Von Thunen's model. We've looked at the benefits, we've looked at the weaknesses, we've looked at some of the basic ideas that, when it comes down to it, a commercial farmer is going to select crops that are that lend itself to make the most amount of money. So farms closer to the market select crops with higher transportation costs, and farms further away from the market select crops with lower transportation costs. Pretty much that simple. Okay, here was a question, a free response question on an old AP exam. This is something I want you to read. I want you to evaluate whether or not you could answer it. And if you need to go back and review key elements of the slideshow so that you can answer it, make sure that you have the capacity to answer this question and answer it well, supplying details. Okay? All right, my friends, we will see you later on.